So here is our foldable. Okay, so we've got our words, and then on the inside you're going to have your definition, and then you're going to add those pictures that we had. Okay, so see how that works. You're going to have your word, definition, and then your picture that we created. Our vocabulary foldable on the inside flap, which I'll show again. We're going to draw this. So for quantitative, it's basically it could be, deals with a variable, it might have a number associated with it in units. Okay, when we look at qualitative measurement or observations, we're going to be looking at distinctions that maybe don't have a number, so tall versus short. So notice I drew one taller than the other. For oscillation, I drew what's called a pendulum. So this is, imagine a weight hanging, this rope hanging from the ceiling with an object at the bottom of it, and then it swings back and forth. Okay, it's swinging back and forth. That's a pendulum. So an oscillation would be the time for one swing, or would be one swing, not the time. So an oscillation would be one swing. So over and back, one swing is an oscillation. The period is also with the pendulum, so I drew another pendulum. It's also based on one swing, but this one I drew a stopwatch, and we're going to actually measure the time of one swing. Over here for independent variable, we're going to do what you may have done in math, draw a t-chart, okay? And instead of putting x, we're going to put independent variable, because independent variable is what we know, so it's what we start with. We're going to know these values before we start an experiment, and we're going to plot that on the x-axis. Notice how it's marked here on our table in the x, and then we're going to plot it on the x-axis. So if we had an equation, we had a line representing our data, y equals 3x plus 2, the independent variable is usually on the right side of the equation, because we're going to put in our independent variable, and it's going to give us an output that's our dependent variable. So our dependent variable, the t-chart or the table again, instead of y, we're going to have dv for dependent variable, okay, which we often associate with y. But in physics we use all kinds of letters, so that's why we've got to be careful what we're using. And so it's the same here. So the dependent variable is what we usually get out of the experiment. It's the y. And we graph it on the y-axis. So notice that it's labeled dependent variable is on the y-axis. Okay? When we get a control in an experiment, we don't want it to vary, so I wrote the word vary, drew a circle around it, and then put a line through it. Hypothesis is an educated guess, so we're going to make a guess, but then we're going to turn it around and make it into a statement. And then for analysis, we're going to take our independent variable, which gives us our dependent variable, and we're going to explain how that happens and maybe even expand our understanding of how that happened. So these pictures are going to go on the inside of your foldable flaps, and I'll show you an example of that. Okay. But then at the bottom, I want you to go ahead and use this empty block. And if you've already used it up or done something else with it, then you'll just put this on the very back of the paper. But watch until the end of the video before you do that. Okay, so down here at the bottom of your vocabulary sheet that you have in your packet, you have kilo, centi, and milli. And on the inside, kilo is the same as 1,000. It's a prefix that means 1,000. Centi means 1/100th, 0.01, or 1/1000th, or 1,000th, 0.001. That's the prefixes. And then you have your symbols. Kilo is lowercase k, lowercase c, and lowercase m. Okay? And that's how you're going to do that part. Okay. Then on the very back, if you have an empty square, you can, if you've messed up that other square, you can put it here, but on the back I want you to put this. You're going to put quantity, variable, and then unit, And then a quantity might be a distance. We're going to measure a distance or a length. The variable will be letter D, and the unit will be M for meter. Okay? Time would be T. Notice it's lowercase t. And the unit would be S for seconds. Period is in capital T for seconds. Okay? And remember, the period is the time of an oscillation. It also can be used to measure the time for one revolution of a spinning object. So put that on there, and then you will have what you need to study for your quiz.